Hi. Hi to everybody. Good morning to all those people that are following us in North America, and good afternoon to all the people that are attending to this conference on this side of the Atlantic. We are more than 850 people attending this conference. This conference is organized by the International Foundation on Big Data and Artificial Intelligence for Human Development. And this conference is focused on a crucial issue for everybody. That is, how can we measure the extreme climate events? And this is also the key factor to understand the real character of this foundation, to put together the scientific community and the business community to identify instruments to improve the quality of human development. But let me start from the very beginning. I am Patrizio Bianchi. My name is Patrizio Bianchi, and I am a scientific director of this foundation. And now I think that we have to answer to the question, what is that, this foundation? Who are the participants and which are the main objectives? Okay, I think that we can send this short video explaining why we want this foundation and what is that, this foundation. Please, the video.
The Big Data and Artificial Intelligence for Human Development Foundation, IFAB, is promoted by the Emilia-Romagna region and was set up to consolidate and supplement Italy's science and technology expertise, supporting the revitalization of the entire European production system in the process. IFAB's mission is to promote the development of big data and artificial intelligence technologies and innovative scientific methods, which can be used to drive sustainable human development. IFAB was founded in Bologna at the center of the Emilia-Romagna region's high-tech network, which consists of 10 technopoles and 88 laboratories and industrial research centers. Since the early 60s, Italy's scientific high-performance computing expertise has been concentrated in Bologna. Currently active here is Marconi 100, the Italian HPC Tier 0 system, forming with the Tier 0 systems of France, Germany, Spain, and recently Switzerland, the European HPC PRACE infrastructure. Leonardo, a new highly powerful pre-exascale supercomputer, will also be developed here by 2022. Leonardo is the pre-exascale system procured by Euro HPC, outcome of the European effort to control HPC technology, co-designed by Cineca and Atos, integrating Partec modular computing software stack, which will be installed and maintained by E4 Engineering, the HPC SME headquartered in Emilia-Romagna region. The founding partners of IFAB include the Big Data Association, which brings together the regional universities and the main Italian research bodies involved in the development of technologies based on high-performance computing, big data, and AI. Regional institutions. National research institutions. National consortia, research centers and foundations. Universities. IFAB's founders also include a number of leading companies like E³CI and Eni, while others are about to join. Finally, another of IFAB's partners is Atos, European leader in the fields of cloud solutions, cybersecurity, and high-performance computing. The composition of the foundation is consistent with its mission of integrating the research system with the production system of large, medium-sized, and small businesses. The International Scientific Board is the body that guides the actions of the Foundation, envisaging medium and long-term scenarios regarding the development of science and technology in response to the challenges of the new millennium. Members of the Board: Ursula Basler, Patrizio Bianchi, Matteo Valero Cortes, Luciano Floridi, Anna Grassalino, Thomas Lippert, Florence Rabier, Alec Ross, Alberto Sangiovanni Vincentelli. IFAB's scientific activities are supported by 4 working groups focused on 4 major areas: conventional and innovative technologies, socio-economic challenges, climate change, life science and precision medicine. A number of projects consistent with these research areas are ongoing. The first of these is the Big Data and AI for Climate Change Analysis for the development of European Extreme Events Climate Index, a tool which can be used by different economic operators to define climate risk evaluation and coverage strategies. The second project is Big Data for Data Society, the Case of Human Habitat Management project. It is focused on identifying operating platforms for managing mobility in large urban systems. The goal of the Quantum Technologies project is to define the functional answers that high-performance computing may provide, both on pre-exascale systems and on systems based on the most recent quantum advancements. The aim is supporting the scientific and production system in the transition towards quantum technologies. The BBC project focuses on Big Code, a new way of conceiving software based on AI and ML techniques, and taking advantage of the first institutional European mirror of the Software Heritage Archive, the largest open-source SW archive in the world, hosted at the ENIA Research Centre in Bologna. The multidisciplinary nature of the projects reflects the composition of the Foundation itself and the context in which it operates. In fact, the Big Data Technopole hosts numerous entities which can take advantage of the high-performance computing services supplied by the current Marconi 100 and the future Leonardo supercomputer. Here at the Technopole, the scientific and business community will be able to make use of the Marconi National Laboratories, advanced laboratories for carrying out research into new production and service activities, downstream from high-performance computing. A founding pillar of a national and international network of application laboratories. The Big Data Technopole has also been proposed as the headquarter of one of the institutions of the United Nations University, dedicated to the application of big data and artificial intelligence for the management of changes to the human habitat. The result is an ecosystem in which research is transformed into innovative capacity that can revitalize European development and identify tangible new solutions for the goals established by the United Nations. An infrastructure dedicated to global development, with IFAB the meeting point between the technological potential of high-performance computing, sustainable development according to the guidelines of Europe and the United Nations, the management of the territory and of an increasingly complex society, investment and production possibilities in the business world. In fact, only through the interaction and integration of these systems is it possible to rise to the challenges of the present and construct a better future.
Thank you. Thank you for this video. And let me say now that the foundation was supported from the very beginning, was promoted by the region Emilia-Romagna. So let me leave the floor to Paolo Salomoni. So Paolo Salomoni is the regional minister for university and research, and she sent to us a short welcome address.
Hello to everybody, I'm Paola Salomoni, I'm the Regional Minister for Education and Research of the Emilia-Romagna region, and I am here to welcome you in the behalf of our President, Stefano Bonaccini. I want to thank all the organization from academy and business that together with the foundation organized and made possible this event. Unfortunately, I cannot attend the event itself, but I want to underline the importance of this first international meeting, international event organized by the Big Data and Artificial Intelligence for Human Development Foundation. It represents, in the same time, the beginning of an important program of activities led by the Foundation, and also the significant research result that it's a part of the Foundation elective fields of the research. I don't want to waste your time, so now I will leave the field to researcher and to the research itself, and I wish you enjoy the rest of the event.
Thank you, Paola. Antonio Zoccoli is the president of the National Institute for Nuclear Research, and he is the vice president of the association Big Data that is putting together all the national institutes. Professor Zoccoli, it's up to you now.
Thank you very much, Patrizio. If the organization may allow me the video, maybe you can see me. Otherwise, I can say a few words. It's a real pleasure to welcome you on this webinar, on this event. The Big Data Association is, since the beginning, one of the actors of this action that the Emilia-Romagna region promoted on big data. Let me spend a few words on the history. It was, I think, 2018 when we started to discuss how to work, how to contribute in this area. It was clear at the time that in the coming years would have been produced an unprecedented amount of data, both from a research community and the society. I mean, small and medium enterprises, industry, public administration, agriculture, medicine, and so on. And it was evident that the nations or the community able to produce, store, and analyze this data will have a leading role in the future society. Following this idea, Regione Emilia-Romagna, the university and the research institution decided to play a major role in this field and created the Big Data Association. It was the first organization working on this field, and then it was coming on the floor the foundation, which is a more structured action. So the member of the association are university, research institution, and national center. The goal of the association is to promote access computing resources, high throughput and high performance computer to maximize the potential of existing innovation and research plan, sharing knowledge and results, to facilitate the cooperation between public and private entities, international cooperation activities, and develop skills with the big data and artificial intelligence domain. And this is even more important because the Regione Emilia-Romagna will become a sort of European data valley, since the Regione decided to open the Tecnopolo site to host big computing facility like the one of ECMWF, the European medium weather forecast, and the new supercomputing pre-exascale computer of Cineca, the Leonardo computer, and the computing center of INFN, the National Institute for Nuclear Physics, which is working on particle physics and the CERN data. So this it will be hosted in Bologna, more than 17% of the computing resources of Italy. So it was natural then to create an ecosystem around the infrastructure and to start a big, a diverse portfolio of activity. One of these central is the climate change study. So welcome to this webinar, and I think this is a natural continuation of our work.
Thank you, Antonio. The foundation is a public-private partnership, and the private partners are quite prestigious. We have Eni, the Eni, that is the big Italian oil company, and on the other side, we have, as a founder, UnipolSai. Here we have the general manager of UnipolSai, Matteo Laterza. Matteo, it's up to you now.
Thank you, Patrizio. And my personal contribution to this event is to restrict my speech in order to leave more time to the other speakers, also in consideration to the big interest that there has been in the event that we are organizing today. As you correctly said, UnipolSai, together with the Big Data Association, is a founding member of IFAB. Almost 1 year ago, we decided to give a positive feedback to the call for interest in the foundation by the Emilia-Romagna region. And we did it because we are convinced that Italy needed a private national initiative to concentrate and coordinate forces to foster applied research in the fields of big data, artificial intelligence, and climate change. Italy has top-class skills, and in particular Bologna, with its world-class high-performance computing infrastructure and scientific base, was and is the most natural place to locate such an initiative. We want this project to be accessible to the entire country, and for this reason, of course, we welcome Eni that recently joined IFAB as a founding member, and we hope that other Italian national champions will follow soon. When we decided to contribute to IFAB, we envisaged that IFAB would become the engine of research and technological transfer from the university and research institutes to the economic system. This, on our opinion, would help to fill the gap between research findings and their applications to the Italian economy, a gap that our country faces in comparison with other European partners. An initiative solidly anchored in Italy, but also linked to the European supercomputing and applied research network. For these reasons, we are particularly pleased to see today the presentation of IFAB first project that concerned the European Extreme Event Climate Index. We see this as an initial step toward making the tools for managing weather-related extreme event risks available. Our country and Europe need better and more accurate information to enable insurance companies and financial institutions in general to offer coverage for these events. And for this reason, we are confident that time will prove that E³CI, that we will discuss later on, is a step in the right direction. And now, as promised, I will stop here and I leave the virtual podium again to Patrizio. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, Matteo. Okay, now it's time to rapidly move to the event, but let me say the last thing. One of the basic issues that we have to face in our foundation is education. We have the possibility, thanks to Atos, to start a training program on a quantum emulator. A quantum emulator is the possibility to train our people toward the new quantum technologies. And this is extremely important for us. Extremely important because it's clear that when we are speaking about big data, we have to move rapidly toward the new technology. This possibility is open to all the associated to the foundation, to IFAB Foundation. Okay, now let me say that everybody who is interested to know more about our foundation can write directly to IFAB info@ifabfoundation.org. Okay, now we are moving to the event. I leave the floor to Paola Mercogliano, Head of Research of the Mediterranean Center for Climate Change. There is the event, there is a roundtable. Let me thank all the people working in this part of the event. In particular, let me thank Professor Antonio Navarra. Let me thank Giovanni Renzo Avesani, and in particular, let me thank Florence Rebier, that is member of our steering committee, of our International Scientific Board. Paola, now it's time that you bring the power and start the presentation of this fantastic research. Thank you to everybody.
Okay, thank you to Professor Bianchi for introducing me. I'm Paola Mercogliano. I am the director of the Research Division Regional Model and Geological Impact at the CMCC Foundation, collaborating with Leithà on the definition of European Extreme Event Climate Index. In this second phase of this webinar, we will have then a technical session, a roundtable, and then a question and answer session. If you are interested to put a question to our speakers and discussant, please, you can use, if you are connected with Zoom, the question and answer window, or you can write your question on the Facebook. Okay, I would like now to introduce Antonio Tirri. He's an engineer and he works for Leithà, and he is the responsible for the development of this specific research activity. Please, Antonio.
Thank you, Paola. Thank you. Just a moment in order to share my screen for the presentation. Okay. I hope you can see the presentation. Again, thank you, and hello everyone. My name is Antonio Tirri and I'm part of the Leithà team. Just a few words regarding my company. Leithà is the competence center of the Unipol Group, focusing on data science and computer science topics. In particular, my group works on projects aimed to analyze the impact of natural events on the insurance business, designing innovative solutions for all our stakeholders. I'm going to be speaking to you today about the first project of the IFAB Foundation, that is the European Extreme Events Climate Index. So, first of all, I want to start discussing the primary need behind the project. In recent times, we have observed an increase in the frequency and intensity of extreme events, with a significant impact on both quality of life and economy. Even from our perspective, that is an insurer perspective, claims that are caused by natural events are becoming more and more relevant. And this results in an emerging need for tools designed to support the implementation of strategies in the climate domain. As you can imagine, this topic is not totally new. In fact, some products of this type already exist. For example, I can mention the Actuaries Climate Index that is developed by North American actuarial institutions. Well, in this project, we were inspired by the ACI and in general by the state of the art. Then we implemented a set of improvements to create a tool with data that is available for Europe, but also for the rest of the world. Then the result is the design and the implementation of the European Extreme Events Climate Index. So let's see the reasons behind the choice of the name. We use European not only because the project is mainly in Europe, but mainly because we base the index on data released by European programs and institutions. We chose extreme events because the index describes well the occurrence of the most dangerous events that are the extremes. Then climate, because you can use the E³ climate index to describe well climatic trends. And finally, index, because we needed a simple tool that could be easily processed and integrated into existing processes. IFAB, that is the International Foundation Big Data and Artificial Intelligence for Human Development, is the main sponsor of the project. And as mentioned before, IFAB has the mandate to promote cooperation between public and private sectors in the field of innovative technologies. And in this sense, the E³CI project perfectly matches this topic. Then we have the Euro-Mediterranean Center on Climate Change. The CMCC is a reference point in Europe for climate change studies, and in this project assumes the role of scientific partner. Then finally, last but not least, the third participant in this project is my company, Leithà, acting as technical and insurance partner. In this slide, I reported 4 key concepts related to the E³CI. The first one regards the input data. We calculate the index using the 5th generation of reanalysis data that are released by the ECMWF as part of Copernicus climate change services. The strength of this choice is that the data is available at global level with a delay of only 5 days. Another important thing to say is that the index has multiple components, and it can be considered as an ensemble of indices. At the moment, we have 5 main components, each of which describes a specific atmospheric condition. We have precipitations, we have extreme temperatures, we have drought and intense wind. It is also possible to calculate a summary index using a combination of components, and at this time we are using the average between components. We will release the index with monthly updates, and each value of the index describes the anomaly of the current month with respect to the reference value in the baseline. And regarding the spatial aggregation, at the moment, the E³CI is published by country, but there is the possibility to perform different kinds of spatial aggregation. And in this sense, the only limit is the spatial resolution of the input data, that is very high. This slide shows a high-level view on how a component is calculated. We will explain all the details during the CMCC presentation that focus on technical details and scientific details of the index. But basically, we have a reference period of 30 years that we named the baseline. And then we have the observation months. They have in common the computation of what we call the characteristic variable for the component. The characteristic variable is specific for each component, and it describes the extreme events. In the baseline, we also do the computation of the mean and the standard deviation over the months of the calendar year in order to derive the reference values. So at the end of this process, we will have 12 values for mean and 12 values for the standard deviation. Then the next step is the standardization. In this phase, we standardize the characteristic variables of the observed month using mean and standard deviation of the corresponding reference months in the baseline. Then the final step is the aggregation phase, when we aggregate all the components into one general index. And as I mentioned before, in this case, in this first phase, we are using the average between components. The E³ climate index can be used in different types of use cases, and here I reported a short list of examples. Each use case can exploit either the general index or a combination of the different components. A first use case regards the insurance business, and is the improvement of budgeting and risk management activities. For example, the index is useful to forecast the impact of future claims that are caused by extreme natural events. But another one is the possibility to link innovative financial instruments to the E³CI trend. But the index could be also a clause of a reinsurance treaty, or can be a part of a parametric insurance policy. Since the E³CI provides an objective measure to monitor climate trends, it is possible to use the index in educational applications, to raise awareness about climate change, or to support public institutions in implementing sustainable development policies. In this phase, information about the index is available in two different ways. The first one is through the IFAB website, and here in this slide I reported the address. This is ifabfoundation.org/E³CI. Here you can find a general description of the index together with its components. And on the same pages, we will publish in the next weeks the engineering guide, which will be the reference document for the project. Then we have a visualization dashboard that allows the navigation of the index information. And in this slide, I have reported a picture of that dashboard. More specifically, as you can see, there is the possibility to filter the visualization by different kinds of parameters, such as observation months, component, and so on. Then after a selection, each country on the map is colored according to the index value of the selected months. And with a click on a country, it's then possible to visualize the entire time series for the selected components. Here, for example, the figure shows the general version of the Italy's index. You can see a peak in October 2018 when we observed the Vaia storm in the northern part of Italy. And other analysis like that you will see in the next presentation held by CMCC. Then on the other hand, expert users can download the E³CI data from CMCC data client platform. And this is another information that you will find in the next presentation. So before closing, I would like to thank IFAB, CMCC, and in particular all the data team who worked with me on the project. And of course, thank you very much for your attention. If you have any question or comment, please feel free to contact me. Thank you again.
Thanks, Antonio, for your nice talk introducing the European Extreme Event Climate Index. And now I would like to introduce Guido Rianna, scientist at the CMCC Foundation and scientific responsible for this activity. Please, Guido. Thanks.
Good afternoon to everyone. Thanks to Antonio for his interesting talk about the index and its significance for financial and insurance sectors. Now I'll try providing more details about the components, their definitions, the scientific background. Okay, we have defined, as said before, 5 components related to its stress, cold stress, extreme precipitation, drought, and extreme wind. The selection stems from the experience of North American and Australian actuaries' climate indices. However, for each component, a climate indicator has been adopted as a sort of proxies for weather-related hazards. But now it's time to give some insights about climate indicators. We have to say that climate indicators have only a limited information content if compared to more time and computational resource demanding physically based modeling, but they are a consolidated way to return information about the frequency and severity of weather-induced hazards. We usually use this one for moderately rare events, while for rare events, more complex statistical approaches are required, for example, extreme value analysis. Finally, selecting an indicator entails a choice in terms of trade-off for maximizing the information content. For example, for hydraulic hazard, the reference time span is strictly related to the geomorphological features of the basins, from few minutes in a highly sailed urban basin up to several days for the longest rivers in natural basins. So we have to take into account all these aspects. Also for this definition, we start from North American Actuaries Climate Index, but we have carried out a further desk review, considering also European references, for example, European Environmental Agency indicators. Okay, the reference dataset, as said before by Antonio, it is the 5th generation of the SCNWF reanalysis, EURA5, with a global coverage and an horizontal resolution of about 31 kilometers. Data are available since 50s up to now. Data are available on the climate data store of Copernicus Climate Change Service. The latency of about 5 days permits a prompt update of the component of the European Extreme Events Climate Index and their components, but probably more details will be given by Caracanatso in their talk after. Okay, which are the stages that are required for defining the components and then the indicators? First of all, the identification of a significant threshold for extreme events. After the standardization process, we have used in this case 30 years from 1981 to 2010, and the standardization is a key aspect of the process. Making possible the comparison among different components, different dynamics, different metrics, but in a way also limiting the potential weaknesses and systematic biases in the input dataset. The third aspect, the third stage is then the computation of the component in the operational mode. So we can start for the first one, it's stress. The procedure is quite simple. We have fixed the calendar day. After, we have identified the 5-day moving windows. So for the reference period, the 30 years, we have 150 values, 30 years for 5 days. Then it makes possible to computation of the 95th percentile of the maximum temperature. Then for each year and each month, the number of days for which maximum temperature is higher than the threshold is computed. The values for the reference time span are used for the standardization process, simply by computing mean and standard deviation, then permitting the calculation month by month of the standardized component. For cold stress, the procedure is quite similar, but of course, in this case, we are interested to 5th percentile of minimum temperature. And after, for each year and each month, we assess the number of days below the threshold. After the standardization, the computation assume the same rules. Extreme precipitation. In this case, we compute the 90-50 percentile of daily precipitation at a monthly base, so not using a moving windows. And for each year, each month over the reference period, we compute the cumulative precipitation exceeding the threshold. After, for each month over the reference period, these values are used for standardization, then permitting again the computation of the component month by month. For drought, we select in this case a very consolidated indicator, standardized precipitation index as suggested by McKee and colleagues. It represents the number of standard deviation that observed cumulative precipitation deviates from the climatological average. Of course, we set as climatological period again, the reference period 1981, 20 and 10, but this index requires also the identification of a cumulative period for assessing the index. So we selected the 3 months following the example of European Environmental Agency indicators. So for each month over the reference period, we have computed the cumulative values. After these values has been fitted by a gamma distribution, transformed in a normal distribution, permitting to compute month by month the SPI. Of course, to maintain the consistency with the other components for which following the general rule, the higher the value, the higher the expected hazard, we use the opposite of the SPI3 value. Finally, we have extreme wind. For extreme wind, we again define the 95th percentile of maximum daily wind speed at monthly basis. After we use from retrieved by the literature, the indicator local loss index as suggested by Donat and colleagues, where the ratio between the maximum daily wind speed and the threshold is computed, but cubed as a proxy of wind power, recognized as more correlated to wind-induced damages. After the standardization and the computation for the operational stages are very similar to those that we have seen for the other components. Okay, now we can see some results at the country level, because as said before by Antonio, at the moment, the data at country level are available. In particular, the general rule is that all the computation are carried out at the grid point level and after aggregated for the administrative unit level of interest. In this case, we are in the graph, we are the monthly values for the component. In this case, it's stress. The bold line represents the latest 10 years, not included in the reference period. After we include two tables, the first one reports the number of values exceeding 1 for each 10 years and the occurrence of top 5 values. This is the situation for Italy. For the heat stress, an increasing trend can be recognized with only 6 events in the first 10 years, then are monthly values exceeding 1, and 42 in the latest 10 years. 3 or among the top 5 values are again concentrated in the latest 10 years, and in some cases, high values are well correlated to, unfortunately, to large impact. For example, we report in the slide the cases of summer 2003 and summer 2018. In this case, the damages and the impacts are also collected in the MDAT catalog. Okay. For cold stress, a decreasing trend can be recognized with 19 events in the first 10 years and only 4 in the most recent 10 years. Okay. Also in this case, we have at least two events reported also in the MDAT catalog. For example, for the winter 1987 and the winter 2012. Extreme precipitation. In this case, we can be recognized an increasing trend. Only a monthly value exceeds 1 in the first 10 years, while 15 values exceed the same threshold in the latest 10 years. And 4 over the top 5 values are again occurred in the latest 10 years. In this case, we have different values, monthly values associated to large impact, also reported in this case in the MDAT catalog, but also in the rapid mapping activation of Copernicus Emergency Management Service. The acronym for these events are reported in the slides. In this case, we consider, for example, October 2018 and November 2019, where different events affected different parts of Italy. Okay, for drought, we have that top 5 values are all concentrated in the most recent 10 years. It is important to see how the last spring, beyond the COVID experienced by Italy, was among the driest for the country, with different values much higher than 1. We have also a photo by the Po River. For the wind, as said before, first of all, 3 among the top 5 values are again concentrated in the most recent 10 years, but we have a monthly values much higher than the other ones. It corresponds to October 2018, when a viastorm affected large parts of Italy, in particular northeastern part. So, of course, it is collected also in MDAT and Copernicus Emergency Management Service list. For this reason, this value, it is currently the only one exceeding 1 in terms of European Extreme Events Climate Index, also for the joint effect of the viastorm, so the wind, intense winds, in particular of heavy precipitation, as seen before for extreme precipitation monthly datasets. All this data can be downloaded, as reported before by Antonio. There is a dedicated page about in Data Climb. The link is reported in these slides, and you can download the data in terms of area of interest. Of course, you have to select the data set, in this case area 5. The administrative unit in the, at the moment are available only country level and the area. An example, for example, for the Italy that we have seen few moments ago. After, you can download the data also in terms of period of interest. In this case, for example, I've selected June 1981. Of course, for all the countries, for all are reported the data for all the components and for the synthetic index. So, also, if we have now released the platform, the data are available, we are yet in pre-operational stage, and at this phase, your feedbacks, your insights, your suggestions, but also your indication for inconsistency in the dataset are very important and crucial for a proper update, improvement of the tool. So we have prepared a brief survey. The link are reported again in the slides. So I'd like to invite you to dedicate few minutes of your time to fill this survey. Your requirement will be collected, processed, and can play a relevant role to improve our tools. Finally, some ideas, some insights about next stages. We are divided in short term and long term. First of all, in a few weeks, the data will be made available at finer levels of administrative aggregation, for example, NATS1, NATS2, and so on. Specific indicators for others not properly accounted by the climate indicators that you have now included will be added, for example, for forest fires or for coastal floodings. The added value associated to use of the Area 5 land with an horizontal resolution of 9 kilometers is now under investigation. Afterwards, the data for indicators as computed by North American Actuaries Climate Index over Europe will be added and made available for downloading in the Data Climb page, permitting the comparison between the two approaches. User and engineering guide, as said before by Antonio, will be finalized, included in dashboard in a few days. A dedicated on long term, a dedicated platform to consult the downloaded data is now under development. After a systematic comparison with data components as computed by North American Actuaries Climate Index is now allowed by the release of the Area 5 data since 50s. Finally, our ambition is that of moving from the hazard to the risk, including also data about exposure and vulnerabilities. Thank you for your attention. I'm, of course, available for your questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Guido, for this detailed explanation of what we have done in this research activity. And now I would like to introduce Caracanatso, Sector Information System Manager of the Copernicus Climate Change Service. We invited Cara today to give an overview of the Copernicus Climate Change Service and to explain us the main features of the analysis Area 5 that, as Guido already explained, was adopted to implement the European Extreme Event Climate Index. that is a data set publicly available on the Copernicus platform. Okay, please, Chiara, you can take the floor.
Thank you, Paola. And good morning or good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to summarize a bit some of the activities, the data and the tools that we develop at the Copernicus Climate Change Service that are related to the extreme events and explicitly in the context of adaptation to climate change and attribution. So I'm going to share my screen. Please let me know if you may see my screen.
Yes,
and my presentation in full mode. Okay.
Fine.
Thank you. Okay, so studying geophysical extreme events is, of course, absolutely important in terms especially of their impacts. Let's say that the variety of extreme events is enormous. If we think, for example, of the way they manifest or where they manifest or their length, and of course, their impact. In this slide, I'm reporting some numbers from the WMO Atlas of impacts from extreme events. And extreme events have caused loss of lives and enormous economic damages. And here I'm referring to extreme events that include droughts, floods, windstorms, tropical cyclones, surges, storm surges, and extreme temperatures, among others. So let's say that understanding of the extreme events is becoming a priority. And this is especially in the context of the climate crisis. And I would say that we need, in this case, for making a step forward, both an empirical knowledge, but also advancement in the basic knowledge. Now, the word extreme has, of course, many different meanings. And in general, we may say that in this context, it may be used to identify something that it is very rare or something that is very large or even maybe very small, but also something with a very high impact. And of course, those three concepts are overlapping, but they are not the same. So when studying extreme events, we take into consideration the timescale of the system, but also the temporal length and the spatial extent of the event. So, for example, thinking of slow onset events such as droughts or cold spells or heat waves versus fast events like flooding or tropical cyclones. And for studying this kind of events, of course, we need data. And we need data and we need tools. And of course, those data and those tools have to be fit for purpose to study such events. And this means, of course, some technical characteristics of the data set, such as the high spatial and temporal resolution, or, for example, an extensive time coverage, thinking of characterizing extreme rare events, but also quality related to temporal homogeneity of the data, presence of drifts, breakpoints in the data sets, or characterization of known biases. And finally, also the usability of the data set is quite important. So are the data accessible? Are the data sets maintained? Or are they provided in near real time? Or are those evaluated and quality controlled? And all those concepts, of course, let's say, connect to the concept of an operational service. So the Copernicus Climate Change Service is one of the 6 services of the Copernicus program. And the Copernicus program is the program for Earth observation to monitor Earth and the environment. Different satellite data are becoming available and will continue to become available within this program. And data are free, are open access, and they are accompanied by quality information. And C3S, the Copernicus Climate Change Service, is one of the 2 services that is operated by ECMWF on behalf of the European Commission. So what does C3S, the Climate Change Service, offer? So it offers open and free access to climate data. It offers tools needed to use the data. It offers information on sectors, quality assurance, user support and training, climate change assessment, as well as outreach and communication. And all those activities are done in an authoritative, but also standardized way. And I think that here, in this case, standard is really a keyword. So if you think, for example, of extremes, we need reference data, but we also need standard methodologies. And this is what the C3S operational service offers. So in practice, it offers data and tools that are found in the climate data store that is here a one-stop shop for data and tools. So we think of the data and we go back to the reanalysis. So the data that were mentioned in the previous two presentations by Guido and Antonio. Of course, we have available a huge variety of data in the climate data store, but reanalysis are among the most used data set also for climate extreme studies, and mostly because of their popularity. So their popularity is because the data set is complete in the sense that it combines a vast amount of observation into global fields using the data simulation technique. The data set is consistent because reanalysis combines model data with observations from across the world into a globally complete and consistent data set using a model, the laws of physics. And they use the same physical model and data simulation throughout the entire procedure. The data set is convenient in the sense that there are maps without gaps. So they are always available in the same way to the users. And it is very important to say that observations are absolutely key in this context. So their availability has evolved drastically over time, and evolving observations are making the dataset more reliable and much more at higher quality. So here I focus just on the two sets of reanalysis. The ERA5 is a full observing system global reanalysis for the atmosphere, land and ocean waves. ERA5 has replaced the previous generation of reanalysis that are named the ERA interim. And in this sense, it is a better product because it has a better model behind, it is developed and it is delivered at a higher resolution, more and better input data are included. So it is available from 1950 onwards, as also Guido was saying, and it is daily updated 5 days behind real time. On the right-hand side, you may see a map of a climate anomaly for the last December 2020. So just to remind you that the 2020 entire year was the warmest year on record for Europe. Together with ERA5, you may find in the climate data store also ERA5 land. This is a dynamical downscaling until 9 kilometers, as Guido was also mentioning. And of course, you may understand that in this case, a better representation of the orography is delivered. So in order to show you quickly the difference between the previous ERA interim system in the context of extreme events and the new ERA5, I'm showing here an animation of one hurricane, the Hurricane Florence, hitting North America in 2018. On the right-hand side, you have the new generation reanalysis. You may see several improvements compared to the ERA interim. So thinking of a much higher resolution, 30 kilometers versus 80 kilometers, hourly output. So each step in the animation is the time step of the model. Now the colors here represent the accumulated precipitation from the starting of the animation, whereas the line, the black line represent the mean sea level pressure. Of course, let's say that this data set is better also because it benefits from additional more years of research and development with respect to the previous one. And it is delivered in near real time. But let's say that the highest quality is found over data-rich areas. The global reanalyses are not the only reanalysis available in the climate data store, but I do not have time to show you the regional reanalysis. So what we do with those climate data, and of course many other data that are available in the climate data store. So first, we extract climate information from data and we transform it into knowledge. So the infogram on the right-hand side of this slide represents the service chain from the data to the information. And there are two typologies of product. On the top, shown our activity of climate monitoring. So I'm talking about reporting the climate at monthly scale. So we have monthly bulletin, but also a nearly European state of the climate. And there is a section dedicated to the extremes. And in the bottom, you see instead the service chain that produces climate knowledge that is instead relevant for supporting adaptation strategies in different sectors. And of course, those many sectors are vulnerable and climate actionable sectors. So for example, we estimate and when we try to reduce the risk associated to pluvial flooding or the levels of risk from the windstorms may become relevant for the insurance sector, or again, extremes are very important in defining the standards in infrastructure for making resilient buildings, or extremes are very important, of course, in connection between health and heat waves. I will show you just one only example coming from those activities, and this is in a collaboration with CMCC. So this activity has the focus of developing data sets, even at a quite high resolution, tools, but also applications to provide a set of climate impact indicators that are related to the extreme precipitation. And of course, also to assess the magnitude of past extreme precipitation events across Europe, but also it has the ambition to make an evaluation of the spatial distribution of flood hazard and damages related to those extreme events over some specific European cities. And the maps that you see here are just an example of the indicators related to the extreme precipitation. So the last activity that I would like to quickly mention here is instead the development of a prototype service for extreme events and attribution. So here, the ambition is really to provide a wide range of users with timely and reliable information about extreme weather events, and especially how they relate to anthropogenic climate change. And on the right-hand side, there's this infogram that is showing for which extreme event typology we have a better understanding of the effect of climate change, and therefore for those typology of events, we may build a more reliable attribution service. So to conclude my very short summary, the data with respect to extreme events here, I've mentioned the reanalysis, and of course, reanalysis provide maps without gaps, and they are able to deliver consistent estimates that are based on the entire observing system. And the EC&WF vision for C3S after 2020 is to continue to allocate high priority to reanalysis, and there are also regional reanalysis that I've not mentioned in my presentation. Of course, our intention is also to look at extremes in a quite more consistent way in our program and across the different services. So we will continue to maintain operational service components such as the monitoring of the climate, but also information on sectoral impacts. And I would like to highlight that more than focusing on data, in this case, we would like to really focus and deliver tools that are tailored for dealing with, for example, extreme events. Finally, we are already liaising, and we will continue to liaise with the Climate Adaptation Portal. Here, I'm referring to the connection with the European Climate Adaptation Platform, Climate Adapt, that's in partnership with the European Commission and the European Environment Agency. Finally, we would like to develop an extreme event catalog in collaboration with the Copernicus Emergency Management Service, and of course, maintain an operational extreme events and attribution service. And I thank you.
Thanks, Chiara, for this very interesting talk. And okay, I want to also ask to all the people attending, because we are receiving a lot of questions. We will try to reply to all of you. And if we are not able to reply today, we will reply in the next days. Okay, and now we can start the table round. And with our invited discussant, already introduced before by Professor Banchi. Okay, then welcome to Florence Rabier, the Director General of EC&WF, to Antonio Navarra, the CMCC President, and to Renzo Giovanni Avesani, the CEO of Leithà. Okay, perhaps, okay, you can switch on your camera. Okay, perhaps Antonio, okay, thank you for attending to this meeting. And okay, my first question is I would like to know from you if you have some general comment on this research activity that has been presented today, and then if which could be the value of this kind of research activity from your specific point of view. and the perspective that this kind of activity can open for the research on climate change and related risk. Okay, we can start from Florence Rabi. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you for inviting me to attend and contribute to this event. It has been most interesting until now, and in particular, the increase in heat stress and extreme precipitation that we saw in the recent past has been really quite striking in the presentation. And generally, I think we cannot really overstate the importance of this work. It has been mentioned, but it's obvious that when we look at the consequences of extreme events in terms of financial and human losses, we need to better quantify the risks caused by these events, and especially in the context of the current climate crisis. And these synthetic indicators supporting the activities of actuaries in particular show how this should be done in collaboration with the relevant sectors of the economy, and in particular with insurance in mind in this case. So Chiara also presented other examples. She presented the example with CMCC, as she explained, that looked at the future risk of pluvial flooding in cities to support disaster risk reduction. So that's also a very relevant example. I can also mention that we have also developed a catalog of windstorms for Europe, which was also developed in close collaboration, interaction with the insurance sector. So it is a bit of a similar study, and it provided as well, again, an example of how it is possible to go from physical risks to the financial estimate of the damages, such as the total insured losses per year due to windstorm. So, as presented by Chiara at ECMWF in the context of the Copernicus Climate Service, which we operate on behalf of the EU, we are also contributing to this sort of studies, such as the innovative E³CI service presented today. So I think maybe to broaden it, where else could this information about climate risk and extremes be used? Well, obviously it can be used to help to drive adaptation. I think Chiara mentioned it quickly, but how can we adapt buildings? And we've started building methodologies to investigate how the estimates of extremes can be used to design new building standards, for example, but also how do we adapt agriculture, energy production. And like many sectors, organizations, and businesses, financial institutions will also be affected by the changing climate. And the risks that come with climate change will need to be included in financial disclosures, which make financial information available to investors and other stakeholders. So as you know, the TCFD, the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosure, was launched a few years back to develop climate-related financial risk disclosures for companies to align their disclosures with the needs of the stakeholders. And ultimately, it's used to integrate climate-related risk into decision-making. So it will be relevant for all aspects of the economy. But when financial institutions conduct analysis of climate risk, they need data on climate hazards and assets for sure. But processing these climate data need strong expertise in manipulation, data management, and also a good understanding of our jargon a bit in the climate community. On top of it, we are lacking a standard methodology, reference data sets, and this means that service providers and financial institutions work with different sources, different approaches for studying the same risk hazard. So as a result, the comparison of the different assessment outcomes is almost impossible. So for Copernicus, we are assembling a data set of climate hazard that will be a reference, we hope, for assessing physical risks that aligns with the TCFD recommendation. So building an authoritative, public, and up-to-date reference hazards data set will benefit the financial industry. It will promote the development of a standard methodology, and it will support institutions in their way of thinking, in the forward-looking climate resilience strategies. So this is another area that will benefit from climate information. So I've mentioned these different areas. So insurance, of course, which is directly related to this topic, that disaster risk reduction, climate adaptation, financial disclosure. So there are many more sectors that will benefit for better tools like the one shown today to quantify extremes in the changing climate. I would just like to finish by saying, you know, where do we see the future as well? How can we go further to support all these applications, and how do we see the long-term future? So first of all, it's very important that Copernicus continues to involve and bring authoritative climate information for all to use and for all to build tools on, like this has been shown today. But also what we need on top of these high quality information is for various users to easily interact with climate information, to bring it together with their own data and their own tools so that they can provide the information directly relevant to them. And in particular, the definition of extreme is quite user dependent. So an extreme for an application will be a bit different from an extreme for another one, which will be less dependent. So more interactivity will be useful in that respect. So the climate data store provided by Copernicus is already providing a sort of interactivity. And the DACs, in particular Wikio, which are data information and access services developed in the context of Copernicus, are already going a long way into providing data and information along processing resources, computing resources, tools, and other relevant data. But to really satisfy the user's need, I think we need to go even further. We need this climate data store, and we need the DACs and all these tools to scale up considerably. So in the same way, you know, although, and Chiara has shown that the improvement in the reanalysis has been going on, but the quality of what we provide is high. It is gold standard. I think we can't hide that we are providing very good information that people can rely on to build their tools. But with more data and more computing power, we could provide much more. And this is exactly what the newly announced Destination Earth, or Destiny initiative from the European Union proposes. So it's one of the initiatives identified in the European Strategy for Data, building on the Green Deal data space. And I think what's important to note is that the European Green Deal actually goes hand in hand with the digital transition. So, you know, we've been talking in the introduction about AI, and I think this initiative really, it culminates the marriage between the Green Deal and the digital transition. It culminates in this initiative, which combine the EU's investment and activities in AI, in supercomputing. We talked about the large supercomputer like Leonardo, in cloud computing, and in, of course, connectivity networks and Earth observation that will really bring together European scientific and, very importantly, industrial excellence, which is a bit one of the goals of this foundation. So Destination Earth, or Destiny, aims to develop a very high precision digital model of the Earth to anticipate, monitor, better understand, and react in time to the challenge of climate change. So this is what we call a digital twin of the Earth. So it's a sort of living digital replica of the Earth that will give us the knowledge that we need to protect our planet's future. So it is combining the physical world. You know, we have the knowledge, of course, of the real physical world, the atmosphere, the ocean, the land, but also you have dynamic models, so the simulation of the Earth. And the digital twin will be driven by this advanced modeling, but also AI. And it will be fed by the continuous measurements, the observations, the data from the real physical world. And that's combining this information that we can provide some insights into how our planet works. So in the context of Destination Earth, there will be this digital twin of the Earth will have unprecedented precision, providing forecasts of floods, of droughts, of fires, really with a very high precision from days to years in advance. It will also incorporate real-time data that will be, for instance, provided by society, like energy use, traffic patterns, human movements tracked by mobile phones, for instance. And finally, as I mentioned, it will make use of AI and sophisticated data analytics. So this is really a truly planetary scale information system that will reveal not just how weather and climate evolve, but also how human actions manifest globally. And what's important is that it will have this interactivity. Users will be able to create their what-if scenarios and replay simulation based on various hypotheses. So the European Commission will lead this initiative, and coordinate implementation efforts between 3 implementation agencies. So ECMWF is one of them, together with ESA and EUMETSAT. So I think just a link between Copernicus and Destination. So this is really the long-term vision in the next few years. We've talked a lot about Copernicus, but Destinationers will build on Copernicus and on Earth observation capacity, which is really in Europe, an area where Europe is leader. It will add the cutting-edge supercomputer dimension and the AI, in particular in the context also of EuroHPC, and it will allow full interactivity of the users with the digital twins of the Earth. So in that sense, Destination Earth will really provide cutting-edge developments that will feed into the future activities of Copernicus, where we continue to deliver operational climate services and data to the users for them to build applications like the one presented today. So in that sense, Copernicus and Destination Earth are very complementary. So all this is very ambitious. So I presented a very broad vision of what we could do over Europe, really extensive developments combining the private sector and the public entities and all these cutting edge developments. But I think really the study presented here today is an excellent example of what is the state of the art today. And these sort of activities will really flourish, I think, in the future, in the context of the developments in the science and in the technology, as the ones I've just mentioned in Copernicus and Destination Earth. And I will conclude there. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Rabier. And now I won't leave the floor to Renzo Giovanni Avesani for his contribution.
Thank you. I will spend a few minutes going through the kind of experience that we experimented during the development of this project. For us, it was a very interesting experience, especially because as foundation, we started operating a little less than 1 year ago, at the first of the peak of the COVID-19 pandemic. And it is quite remarkable, I think, that in this year, we were able to come out with this kind of a product. And we think that more is going to come, because we want to still invest in this kind of applied research that is what characterizes the foundation. The foundation is a foundation in applied research, the kind of applied research that runs on computers. As I say this, I remember that IFAB is part of the infrastructure that there is in Bologna, the Bologna Technopole, which is one of the most powerful APC centers in Europe and possibly in the world. Well, why do I think that E³CI could be useful to people and the economic system? I will briefly go through 3 suggestions. E³CI provides, in my opinion, useful information. It promotes research and cooperation. And finally, and for us as insurer, the most important thing is the first step toward envisioning a market. So let me go briefly through these 3 reasons in favor of this kind of work. In the first place, I do not need to remind you or anyone else the economic and human damages that extreme events are causing. In recent years, there even seems to have been an increase in their number and severity. Still, we know very little so far about them. We don't know in advance when, where, and how they will happen, and this is open field of research. But still, as of now, we need to provide insurance. We need to provide protection and information to face this kind of risks. It is very difficult to provide affordable protection against them without accurate measurement of their frequency, severity, and their granular distribution over a geographical area. IFAB, when commissioned this research, had this kind of needs in mind. The second suggestion that I have is that E³CI is a perfect pretext to promote cooperation and collaboration among like-minded people. Our friend at the European Center for Medium-Range Weather Forecast and Copernicus developed very sophisticated tools to monitor the atmosphere and collect data. It is very important for them, in my opinion, to know all the possible uses that this data can have and address all the necessary requirements in their data collection process. They need to know all the different data needs and the value that this data may have in different fields. Therefore, we are particularly happy to have them here today. Finally, as a first suggestion, I would remark that E³CI is a first step, I would say a stimulus to start building a fundamental piece of infrastructure that today we do not have, a market, a liquid, transparent market where weather-related events could be priced and exchanged. To do this, we need data, publicly available, reliable, and certified data. We need to work on data. We need to refine E³CI in many ways. We need to liaise with other market participants to better tailor the index. We need to start designing product linked to E³CI and start testing them. At the end, if we are lucky and determined, we will be able to offer to our citizens better and more affordable insurance product and contribute to their peace of mind. The development of a new market is not easy, but we trust that markets have a magic. In fact, let me show the magic that is built inside markets by quoting a famous sentence from Winston Churchill and rephrase it. It has been said that transparent and liquid markets are the worst type of exchanges, except for all those other types of exchanges that have been tried from time to time and failed. So this is the way I see our work ahead. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I want also take the opportunity to say that we are very happy of this collaboration, and also for us it was really a first step, and we are really happy to have the opportunity to work together to the improvement of this index. There are still a lot of things that we can do to improve it. This was only the first step, and we hope to make better in the future. Okay, now I want to leave the floor to my president, Antonio Navarra.
Thank you very much. And of course, I can't resist by saying that this study of extreme event has been extremely interesting. Let me say a few things about the role that science and research can play into this, this whole story. Science has a big responsibility. We have started all this business of climate change, and I've witnessed the transformation of a science that was basically hidden in obscure laboratories, worked on by obscure people and overworked students, into a major geopolitical issue. And so this, of course, has given us new responsibilities, has also changed quite a bit the landscape we're moving in. He also made clear that, as Florence has said, once people realize that climate is not this fixed sort of scenario in which our life move and is actually changing, and it can change, is changing, and it will change, suddenly people realize how many human activities are based on assumption that the climate will always be the same. And so once you realize that, then of course, then suddenly things becomes very, very delicate, and people of course spend enormous time trying to quantify the impacts, and then At that point also emerged the fact that human activities are actually an active factor in the changing climate because we can affect the climate. And people, of course, have gone even backwards and made extensive studies of past civilization to find out that the demise of civilization was caused by climate change, even if probably is becoming increasingly clear that was not the only factor. It's also becoming increasingly clear that climate has been a major amplifying factor in all these crises. So the question is, climate is with us, it will stay with us, and so it's something we have to deal with. So I welcome very much the interest on the side of the private sector in understanding how climate information can actually become part of their decision chain. And the decision chain is a delicate thing because we produce data, that's our job, we produce data, but data must become information, and information must become understanding, and understanding must become decisions, and decision must become action. That's the chain in which we're all part, and where science can actually lead up to a certain point, at least to the place of producing understanding, and then we can leave the decision to somebody else that has to take decision. But our role, our responsibility is to generate understanding that is honest, timely, at the right time. So for instance, I appreciate very much that this project from inception to actually deliver was about a year, that I found is a good time. And usually the science community tend to take 3 years for everything, you know, that's sort of a standard. So I appreciate this very much, that I think is an indication of a understanding of the needs of the private sector to act on their needs that are here and now in a way they're clear and present needs, and they cannot be projected too much. Is also, I think, a stimulus for us to work fast and produce things in a way that are better, cheaper, and faster of what is available. So I think from this interaction, both sides can learn quite a bit. And Florence has already described what is the scenario in terms of the transition to this new tool that the Commission is preparing, Destination Earth or Destiny. I have to say that in some sense, this is a culmination of a process that started from the transformation of the classic weather forecast problem as a deterministic problem to a more and more probabilistic statements as the range of the forecast was extended in time. And so including probability immediately makes the risk a factor and transform the problem from a problem of, in some sense, somebody's telling me this is going to happen, and well, we have to assess what this information that I'm giving you means for you and for chain of decision. So the issue of probability, and in some sense, is transferring some of the responsibility on the user. And this means that the relation between the technology provider, the science provider, and the users must be really close, because only in this cooperation, then we can increase value on one end, we can increase understanding and generate more questions. It's our job, after all, generate questions and we try to answer. Hopefully we generate more questions than we answer. And so we're very happy when we go home in the evening and we have a lot of questions that are unanswered. Let me conclude, because it's also a special day, because this is the day that the last official document for the creation of the Italian National Weather Service has been published. So Italian Meteo is now a formal reality. And that's, of course, a reason of satisfaction. But it's also important because I think that a major component of the process I just described are institutions. You must have the right institutions in order to really be able to generate this process. And the center, of course, is one example of the right institution, the right time. ECMWF has been a success story because it has a model, an institutional model that was very successful. So I think it's important for Italy that we are at this juncture. Of course, there is a long way ahead. We still have to organize it. but I think it's important that we have it in place, and so we can move forward. And I think I'll stop here because I tend to chat too much, and then I'll take time from somebody else. Good evening.
Okay. Thank you, really. Thank you for all your contribution. It was very interesting for me and the auditors. We have a lot of questions, and then if you are agree, I think that now we can move to the last part of this webinar, because there are many questions. I think that we have time perhaps for one question to Florence Xavier, because there are a lot of questions concerning the future of the plan about the future of reanalysis. If you plan to have availability of new reanalysis, and with to have the people want to know which are the main features of these reanalysis, of this new generation of reanalysis that eventually you plan to have in the next years.
Okay, so I can say that yes, we are indeed usually redoing our reanalysis on regular timescales. So at the moment we just published the reanalysis ERA5, which is a big step forward, as Chiara explained, because it's a really high resolution, and it went back now to 1950, which is the first time we go back with the same reanalysis from 1950 to now, and will continue. But when we upgrade our understanding of the model and of how the Earth system evolves, for instance, now in our forecasting system at ECMWF, all the different components of the Earth system are coupled between the atmosphere, the ocean, the land, the sea ice, etc. So we always improve our representation of the Earth. We also, when we go back in time, we always reprocess some data, some satellite data that we can reprocess, and also we manage to retrieve some old data. So it's worth doing regularly reanalysis every few years, and we are thinking that the next one, ERA6, will be produced in a few years, and it will be again more coupled between, for instance, the ocean and the atmosphere. It will include better physics, better understanding of the Earth system, and hopefully better observations as well. So indeed, ERA5 is there to stay for a while, but then we are already working at the next generation of reanalysis, and we'll continue doing that.
Okay, thanks. And for Antonio Navarra, what about the next generation of climate data? What do you think? Which are the main features of that that this data, this new climate data, has to have, especially for support this kind of applications?
Well, I think reanalysis, as Florence said, is the center. I think is the the building block of any analysis. I think one of the things that we'll try to move on is to expand. We need to include more data that is not traditional physical data. So we need to include biogeochemical data and chemistry data, and also social and economic data. There is an effort underway to try. The problem with the socioeconomic data is that they're not really gridded, and so sometimes they're difficult to compare together with the other ones. So there are efforts underway, including at our place, to try to find a reasonable way, that meaning more or less consistent way, of generated gridded socioeconomic data, so that we can start cross-analysis of environmental data with the socioeconomic data. I think that would be a major step forward. I think we'll open a lot of new science and research, because it will give us the opportunity to try to put together the impact directly from the environmental data on the socioeconomic outputs. So that's probably the most exciting thing that I can think of right now.
Okay, thank you. And looking to the question that we are receiving, we have also a question for Avisani. What could be the added value for the indexing, including also data for vulnerabilities and exposure, permitting the risk analysis?
It would be extremely useful, especially since this is going to be the base in order to be able to to understand in terms of probability and values what we are facing and what we have to ensure. As a matter of fact, with what we have on the table today, the E³CI, we are already undertaking some estimate at the system level, at the, you know, in terms of what is the kind of exposure that there are in Italy. And this is a first step in order to be able to confirm and evaluate the goodness of the kind of data that we are collecting and the kind of indication that we receive from the index.
Okay, thank you. Very, very important. Okay, it is really difficult for me to select the question that we are receiving. Okay, I have one question for Guido. If you plan, or if you and Antonio, I don't know which best guy to reply to this question. If you plan to also have a new configuration of the index, including future projection.
Yes, we have not included in the list of our future actions, but probably we could include also because our standardization process, it's quite good to include easily also information about future projection. Okay, we use at the moment a reference period that we can use also for future projection, providing more insights for insurance and financial sectors also about this one. Of course, in this case, we can exploit again Copernicus Climate Change Service and Climate Data Store for hosting at the moment Eurocordex climate projection that at the moment represent the state of the art for the Europe in terms of climate projection. Okay.
Okay, speaking about Bologna, in the framework of the project Highlander, we are also providing the analysis at the 2 kilometer over Italy. And then this could be also another opportunity, also if we don't have, of course, an ensemble, but this could be nice to show if there is an added value of a very high resolution data set or not. Okay, also for you, Guido, there is a lot of question about validation. Are you trying to validate the component of the index?
Okay, it is a very challenging task. At the moment, we have collected data. We are considering data from different catalogs for the different components. As said before, we consider NDAT, but also the rapid mapping activation, the lists carried out and made available by Copernicus Management, Emergency Service, and so we are validating these events with the higher values that we have in our catalog month by month for each component. Okay, of course, it's quite easier to validate the single components rather than the entire index. Okay.
Okay. We have also some questions for Antonio. Okay, the first one, if there is any restriction on the use of the data.
Well, in this first phase, users may use the index data for individual, professional, and non-commercial use. But with IFAB, we are working on a more structured version of the user license. The important thing to say is that the intent remains to foster the index use and the dissemination.
Okay, great. And also, what about the documentation? Do you plan to have a documentation available about this index where it will be available?
Yeah, at the moment, we have a detailed description of the index on the IFAB website. Then we will collect feedback from the scientific community in the coming weeks, and then we release the engineering guide on the same website. And the engineering guide is the reference document for the project, for the index, together with its components.
Okay, and will the E³CI index data be available also for the rest of the world or only for Europe?
At this time, the data is available for Europe. but we calculated the values also for the rest of the world. So in the next weeks, we will release all the data.
Okay, and also another question: in the index are currently considered the only atmospherical component. Do you plan to include also other component, and which are the additional component that you would like to include?
Okay, okay. If you want, Antonio can answer.
No,
Because,
no,
okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, because as said during my talk, we started from the experience of North American Actuaries Climate Index, and in this case, data about sea level rise and this variation during month by month are also reported by using a network observations. Okay, we decided of using them, but at the moment we are collecting all the data, validating to build the same approach to understand it is feasible also for Europe using the same grid of observation that have been successfully used for North American index.
Yeah, and then, I would like to add that we are working on an additional atmospheric hazard that we'd like to investigate. It's not a secret that a major portion of our claims are caused by natural events connected to hailstorms. So we know that these events are very localized and they are very difficult to describe, but we are planning to work on these issues in the coming months.
Okay, and another question: have you compared with the other actuaries index the present result of the index?
Okay. We, as said before during the talk, but also during Q&A session, we started from the experience of North American index. And so we started of using this data, their components, but we have carried out also a desk review analysis to understand the other experiences. And so, yes, we have compared, we have used also the component indicators used for North American domain. As reported before, we included them for downloading from the data client page, okay, to permit the comparison for all the users interested to them, okay, because they represent at the moment a reference for actuaries climate index studies.
Okay, thank you. We have a lot of very, very technical question about reanalysis and about the opportunity to use this data for adaptation. Okay, how is possible to obtain this data? As you have already written in the question and answer window, I think we have reported the link to the two different websites. On the IFAB website, you can visualize the data, while in the data climb website, you can download the data. And about the Google form is included in the question and answer window. Okay, and okay, perhaps I think that we can stop now, because there are many questions that are really technical about the selection of the indices and so on. Then I think that it is better than our speaker will reply directly to the person. Okay, and okay, I want to really thank you all the speaker and all the discussant and all the people attending to this session. And now I want to leave the floor to Professor Bianchi for the final greetings. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Paola. Let me say that I am very happy. I'm very happy because it seems to me that this is the best presentation of our foundation. There is a question that our follower posed. Do you think that is it possible that this kind of event can influence government and policy? I feel that this is our duty. I think that the duty of science and scientists today, together with the business community, is to offer to the government of the countries, to offer to the Commission, to offer to all the people the possibility to use all the instruments for human development. I feel that this is extremely important, and the fact that we started with this huge problem of climate change and how can we measure the effect, the damages of, I want to say extraordinary, I hope extraordinary, extreme events, I think is extremely important. We have to know. We have to know, and to know is extremely important also, to work together for a best future. I ask you to stay in touch with us. We want to stay in touch with all the people that attended today to this forum. And I feel that we can work together also in our future. Thank you to everybody. Thank you to the researchers. Thank you to the three friends who discuss today about these results. Thank you to all the people who permitted us to have this webinar, to the technical assistants, and of course, thank you to all of you. And we consider you our friends, and I think that is a good start for our activities, for our joint activity. Thank you so much, and see you soon.